Okay. So it's not always appropriate to use headings, or it's not always desirable depending on your design. So, for example, what I've got here is some basic descriptions of the different technologies you might come across in website production. For example, HTML, which is the core of all web pages, when it's used on its own, or on its own just with maybe images and basic media, produces what's known as static websites, which aren't really changeable very easily. And it's also used in languages that produce dynamic websites, as it's the end result. So what I mean by that is PHP and ASP are server-side languages. They run on the web server. They are then parsed after perhaps they've communicated with a database, which can be changed at any given time, and that stores most of the content. So we use the server-side language to query, ask it questions, get results, and then this information is passed. That's another word for interpret. So it's like having an interpreter sat on a web server somewhere who listens to one language coming to them and then speaks the other language. And the language that the parser speaks is HTML. So ultimately what is provided to the browser is HTML, HTML being the language of the web. CSS is used to separate style from content and structure. HTML provides that. JavaScript is used to provide more meaningful and complex interactions. And you might also come across XML and JSON, which are data formats. They're bespoke data formats, which means you can produce custom data structures, and they're done in meaningful, human-readable ways. XML is most readily used with RSS feeds, so news feeds. BBC still has an XML feed, weather sites, things like that. Perhaps Twitter used to use it quite a lot as well, less so now. And then JSON is used to provide predominantly responses from APIs, which are application programming interfaces. So they allow you to, say, work with YouTube or Facebook and pull certain elements of their service into your own application. JSON is native to JavaScript. So if you're working in HTML5, a suite of languages, HTML5, we just put that in. HTML5 is the current standard HTML, but it also refers to the current standard of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript together, also including the new features that came about with this. I won't go on to list them in the page at the moment, but features such as Canvas, which allowed for animation, for games programming in the web to come about, even 3D rendering to a certain extent. Some people have built render engines using HTML5. Other things, the ability to work on local file systems. So that's caused more web-based applications to appear, known as maybe extensions or Chrome apps, those kinds of things. Okay, so what I was going to show you is that sometimes it's useful to have a class. We might not see the outcome of this just yet, but essentially a class can be styled individually from the main body style, but different from an ID, which has to be unique. So all the IDs we used in the headings have to be unique in that page. A class can be reused. So I might call this class. If it'll let me set it, I think what I'll do is I'll just split that up, put in the paragraph that I would like. I'm going to use a tag called span. I'll give it a class, and we'll call that emphasize term. which is what we're doing. We're emphasizing a term, and that will just cover the HTML bit /span. Then if I go back into design view, I should be able to reuse that by clicking the drop down, finding the class if it exists. Actually needs to be defined in the style sheet. So we will have to define the style sheet. So we'll do that from scratch now. So add a CSS source. We'll create a new CSS file. Call that main, and we will put that in a folder for our CSS files. So save that as main. Save that. It'll add as a link, and we could put conditional usage in, but I'm going to leave this as the main style sheet for now. Okay, and highlighting this now. Just double check. It's got emphasized term. I'm just going to add a rule in the selectors. It's added emphasized term. I don't need to add any properties to that just yet, but I will, seeing as though we've got to that point. So hopefully now, when I highlight that text again, emphasized term is now there. So I can highlight all of the things that I want to use this style on, having not actually given it a specific style. And this could be used anywhere. So what I'll do is I'll tell it in properties that its color, spelled in an American way, is going to be, and I can give it a variety of values. I can type in red, and then you will notice in the page that all of those have turned red. To do more complex things, really I need to be in the design view, sorry, in the code view, looking at the style sheet itself. Now, there are a few different ways we can do colors. We can do named colors, and there are certain named values. And if you look on the W3 Schools website, you will find a list of color values. If I can just get this open for a second, I'll show you roughly where they are. W3schools.com. And if you do a search for color values, you'll find HTML color values, and there is a list in there showing all the key color values that can be named. It also lists them against a hex, a hexadecimal number. What that means is a hexadecimal is a value between 0 and F, and there are 6 of those values. So the first 2 represent red, the second 2 represent green, the third 2 represent blue. And so that's a different way of creating the color. So going back into this page, if I was to put red in hex, I would put the hash key and then FF0000. The shorthand for that is just F00 if the 2 pairs are essentially the same. Other ways we can do this, we can put RGB, and RGB will let us pick a value. Actually, RGBA will let us pick an RGB alpha value, so we can pick the color, and we can also choose the transparency of that color. Let me put in. So what we can see there is a series of digits: 213 red, 2 green, 5 blue, and 0.48 in opacity alpha channel. So that's half opaque or half transparent, however you want to see that. But for now, I'm just going to have that text as red. I'm going to give it font style of italic. I'm going to then save all at that point, which will save the CSS file and the HTML file. Back into the source code, sorry, into design, and there we can see that it's italicized and it's red. Okay, and that's pretty much where we can leave it for now.